If you're a Scorpio, Pisces, or Cancer rising, you need to hear this, but you won't like it. It is not just okay to be indifferent. It is actually essential for you to be indifferent if you want to make money, like good money, like wealth kind of money. So let me unpack this for you. Being a water sign, rising sign, you are everything but indifferent. You feel a lot. You care a lot. Things matter to you on a level that you don't even understand why, nor you care to understand why. And others love you for it. But as I mentioned in the other videos, 8th house, which is the house that says this is how you specifically are set up, designed, made to make money, and lots of money, not just self-employed kind of like ticking over, comfortable, but like really big money. So your 8th house tells us that, but it's in a position to yourself, to your sense of self, which is all the kind of stuff that I just talked about and mentioned, like the emotional self, being that you're a water sign. First house is not emotional house, but when you have a water sign there, you are emotional. The way you experience yourself in the world, the way others feel you, it's the emotions are high in the sense of on the list of what they notice about you, and also high in the sense of how you experience yourself, so through the emotions and the emotional body primarily and firstly. And so from that perspective, when we look across to the house where you are, it's your blueprint for how to become wealthy, we are looking at a house that's not sitting comfortable with that sense of self. So, and it's a house, in your case, of whether Scorpio, Pisces, or Cancer rising, it's a house of air. The air element is in your 8th house. That's a given. That's a fact, astrological fact. So just think about that. Like, air usually disturbs the surface of water. Water doesn't know what to do with air. It's too intangible, too non-feely, literally, right? So all the ways in which air operates are quite alien to you, essentially. And yet the very nature of air element and how it transforms its environment is the model for how you transform as a person, but also, and therefore, how you help others transform. It is your own model, business model for transformation. And why transformation is important in business, it's the kind of work that we do for others that we can charge higher ticket, because people will pay more money, much more money for an actual transformation, for them to move from A to B, while A, or A to Z, or A to, I don't know, M or N, right? So like an example would be loss weight businesses. Why that's like a really potentially, if you were a personal trainer, I mean, I don't know much about the business model myself, but like specifics, not as a client or certainly not as a business owner in that field, in the industry. But I know enough that that's quite lucrative. And I know that when I go to a gym, they're asking quite a bit of money. And then if you want a personal trainer, it's like an extra, someone's really spending time with you specific to your own needs and conditions, physical health, etc. That's usually double the price, a monthly fee for the gym membership, right? Because someone is going to take you from one shape and form, weight and shape, right, to another. Now we pay a lot of money for that kind of transformation, that it's sort of real and visible. And that's what happens in the 8th house. The 8th house is the house of transformation with and of the other. There is definitely programmed within the 8th house mechanics and then dynamics that we are, again, well set up to be working with others now, because it's in that weird place in relation to your own sense of self. We are not particularly keen going there or identifying with those qualities. And because it's the 8th house and it's the house of underworld, it also, one of the prerequisites of the 8th house, but ultimately transformation, is that death needs to occur every single time. A death of sorts occurs so the transformation can happen. And so no one is particularly typically keen to rush into their house, right? Because death awaits. So having the air element in your 8th house gives you a particular definition of your business model. So take a pen and paper and write this down. The transformation model I'm here to provide is to move my clients from scattered and diffused to balanced and poised. So scattered and diffused are the states of air element before the transformation. It's a starting point that it's transforming from. And then it leads, the process takes you the end result of the transformation. The transformation is complete when there is balance regained and poise regained. Before I go into the specific rising signs, so Scorpio, Pisces, and Cancer, and then offer you I typically do this, I offer 3 suggestions of your business offers that you can create for your clients. I want to just give you a kind of more general sense of and feeling, right? What typically businesses that have air in the 8th house, the house of money making and wealth creating, are best geared for. All these businesses would have these things in common, these processes, these themes, these pillars, the cornerstones of their business, and they would be organization, systemization, ideation, conceptualization. So these are all air-based, air element ways of doing that work. So it's mind-driven, it's mental activity driven and focused. So like in any transformation, we are moving from chaos to order, general to specific, and every element has its specific way of doing it. And with air, it's mind, it's mental, neuro processing, using logic, analysis, but also very importantly, communication, conversation, dialogue. That's what all air elements or signs thrive in. And it's how they best make sense of whatever it is that they're going through, whatever it is that they want to achieve. And then in terms of the kind of clients you're best positioned to attract, they also need to be prioritizing in their way of moving through the world. They need to be prioritizing the mind, the thinking, the talking, the analyzing, the comparing, systemizing, all the same language and terms that we use for the business, because you're matching your business with your clients, obviously, right? And so you can see now how almost unnatural they may feel to a water rising sign, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. All of these are the words and the terms that are not that comfortable, not that easy, in the sense that they don't come easily and naturally to a Scorpio, Pisces, or Cancer rising. But it's the mandate, it's the requirement if you want to be a business owner, if you want to grow your business, if you want to have abundance and prosperity, infinite kind, or at least the potential for it to be always available there. Okay, let's now look at each separate rising sign. So I'm going to start with Scorpio rising, which means I'm starting with the Gemini in the 8th house scenario. So for you, I have 3 suggestions that could be your ideal business offers that you can create for your client's transformation. They are synthesis, exchange, and agility. In the synthesis offer, you're moving your clients from scattered, isolated data into more stable, interconnected networks of meaning and forms that they're transforming into. So let me use coaching as an example, as that's the closest to me and so I'm best placed to offer advice in that respect. So as a coach that's working in your 8th house where you have Gemini, you have to create containers for your clients where there is enough flexibility and spaciousness and room for just addressing all that scatteredness, that diffusion, the interconnected, isolated pockets of their psyche, of their experience that come to you to help them move them away from towards the more stable and coherent position. So you, as a Scorpio rising, might struggle with this, but you have to be open to very disparate, disjointed, tangential conversations, ways of looking at the world, making sense of the world. So it's like walking into a room where children were just left unsupervised, and children of the age, I don't know, 3, something like that, or 5. I don't have children, so I don't know what age is best example, maybe 5. But it's just a mess and chaos. But actually, they, they know what they've done and why they've done and why something is there and not over there and why it's spilt and not, put back on the shelf or whatever, right? They had a reason. So that's how your Gemini transformation needs to function as well. It needs to allow for these experiences, Gemini-like experiences, to be allowed, so that then from that well-surveyed mess, a well-formed new shape can be made. And that journey is like integration, as it always is. It's like, what of all of this have we, like, it's, we want to make sense still, it's useful and all that stuff, right? Whatever the specific criteria is, but it's like, what of that fits into the next thing they're changing into. And then it's the process of synthesis and integration, right? To get them to the more stable, and because they're air, and air, however much it's air, and it does need the space and freedom, it also wants to be stable. In order to achieve a certain outcome, it will need to allow and create sort of stability, form of stability, some stability, not as a way of imprisoning it, but as a way of just holding it so it doesn't continue dispersing and scattering, right? Now, in this synthesis, you're more like you're really more a space holder, and you're letting them do their work, all of this work that I just talked about. But in my second suggestion, exchange, your role is going to change slightly. In the exchange offer, you're moving your clients from static isolation through to dynamic integration. And I'm using the isolation twice for the 2 different offers, which is not against any rules, but I just want to clarify why I'm doing that, because the unhappy place for an air element which they will always arrive at a point of near death, right, is that isolation, because it's the opposite of their most alive state, which is connectedness, because they are literally physically, elementally connected with everything, right? So isolation is a near-death space for them. When I said earlier that you will be changing to, your role will be changed slightly, here in this container, in this offering, exchange, you're being the communicator. You're very much like, you're like the friend, where before you were more silent partner and the space holder, but here you're an active partner. You're engaging with them. You're playing a devil's advocate. You're being critical, as in you're thinking critically. You are responding. You're being considerate. You're you're analyzing them back to them. You are giving them, but you're always giving them something to bounce back off, because in that bouncing back off, you're giving them something that they can push against. So that's what I mean, devil's advocate, something that's contrary, that's different, so they can argue themselves out of it. And by doing that, they're actually recreating themselves, or rather creating themselves in this new form. Because without that friction, there is no chiseling and defining, right? So you're being, and this is back to the indifference piece that I said, that you have to be indifferent. This is why it becomes so helpful, because you have to just be detached. It's another word for being detached, but like indifferent in the sense that you can't be invested in their success. Well, yes and no. Obviously, you want them to succeed in whatever, and you want to deliver the transformation, but the indifference piece allows them the space that they need, your client, when you have air in your 8th house, it allows them to find themselves. Too much interference, they're suffocated, or they lose themselves, because they're easily influenced, if you like, steered, because it's air. That doesn't mean that they're air, that they're Gemini or any air sign, none of that. It's just the mechanics of how you make wealth, is that you need to set up those containers, the business model, however you want to call it, in ways that honors air as an element and how it transforms. That's the only logic here, and the only wisdom and philosophy that you need to know. So you can actually go and research the elemental geological layers to this conversation, and will give you probably even greater depth and richness of the information to build the business model that's best suited for you. And my last suggestion for Scorpio rising and Gemini 8th house is agility. This one is slightly different in that you're moving your client from rigidity to fluidity as opposed to stability. And yet, this is that piece that I just talked about, how air cannot be too constrained by stability. And as long as fluidity is balanced, then that's stable. So this is the kind of mind work, like cognitive behavioral therapy kind of work, where they're learning to think differently. Not so much beliefs, although that too, but it's kind of rephrasing and reframing the way they speak to themselves, about themselves, to others, which is essentially the way they speak. That's how they're creating reality. Well, however one speaks, that's how one creates reality, right? But yeah, so this agility container offering that you could be creating would be focusing on changing their thinking, neuroplasticity. It's asking you to, as a facilitator, as a coach, let's say, to coach them into a more flexible way of thinking, into different perspectives. Now, if you're Pisces rising, then you have Libra in your 8th house. And I have 3 suggestions for you too, for what kind of business offerings you could be creating. They are equilibrium, deliberation, and attunement. So equilibrium could be mediation work, where you are helping couples or working with relationships, people's relationships. So you have 2 clients is what I mean by mediation, right? Because you're essentially moving the client from discord to harmony. Now, this, of course, can be actually internal family systems work as well, because there is a discord, internal discord of different parts of ourselves that are at war with each other, in disagreement, in discord, right? So, and then this work would be working with the client to bring harmony, to harmonize the internal. I presume you know what IFS rather is. It's internal family system, which assumes that we are all essentially fragmented. We all have different parts. When we say, oh, there's part of me that thinks like this, there's part of me that feels like this. Our internal managers, the inner critics, the children, the adults, the lovers, the friends, the teachers, the parents, whatever, right? All these are different roles we play in our lives, and in that sense, we are fragmented. This is not like to pathologize it, but it is kind of how to, it is a diagnosis in a sense of evaluation of the landscape, the internal landscape we all have. And so more often than not, it's a big family system. There are many, many members. And a lot of times, as we all know, parts are at war. So in addition to being a mediation kind of work, you could be like internal mediation, right? That you're doing that kind of work with a client. So it's a work about objective truths and subjective perspectives. And rather, objective doesn't exist if you ask me, but more like a shared reality and shared truths versus my own only truth. If it's a relational work outside relationships, or if it's IFS, it's the same thing, really, just kind of applied to a more internal and contained system. My second suggestion, deliberation, is an offering that moves your client from chaotic passion to civilized discourse. This one is similar to the equilibrium suggestion, except that here the focus is on the way we communicate with ourselves and with the other people. So it's on discourse. And you're essentially teaching or coaching the client to be deliberate, intentional in how they're expressing themselves. These actually could be almost like a stack. So you start with like a beginner level is equilibrium offering, and then you build on that with the deliberation offering, or however you obviously want to call them. Because the first one is more about, the equilibrium is more about identifying the issues and the dynamics themselves, and kind of analyzing the truths, the subjective versus shared and all that stuff, right? Where now here we have identified what it is, and we go to deliberation module or container or whatever, right? And now we use language to share what we learned. And we learn, and the focus is learning how to speak, how to communicate what we learned. So we are learning, we are being coached about the language and the way we speak, from just impassioned, fiery responsiveness to considered, poised responsiveness. So we go from reactivity to responsibility, or the ability to respond, right? And my third suggestion for Libra 8 house, attunement. In this container, or rather in this offering, or both, you are moving your client from unconscious projection to conscious connection. So this is again the next level from the previous two. This is probably the toughest one, in the sense that mandate, or that task to any human being to withdraw projection, is almost A, impossible, and B, not meant to be complete withdrawal of the projection, but it's about being very conscious about the projection. So in terms of this is the next level from the previous two, like the third level. After a couple, let's say, have been coached to how to communicate from the place of responsiveness, considered responsiveness as opposed to reactiveness, now they're learning how to listen to the projections in what they're communicating. And finally, for you Cancer risings out there, therefore with Aquarius in the 8th house, my 3 suggestions for your business offerings are emancipation, detachment, and innovation. In emancipation, you're moving your client from unquestioned, traditional, inherited traditions and thinking to a liberated truth of their own making. So in very plain terms, this could be a post-divorce business for individuals who need help. They have been forced into emancipation by circumstances outside what became a tradition, essentially, for them, the marriage, let's say, right? And so they're now outside of that, they're thrown out of the safety, and now they have to they are emancipated by that definition that they're outside. They've been liberated, but they're not really, they don't know how. Or it could be a business that actually helps someone while they're still in the marriage to get out and be emancipated by the time they're actually out. And obviously, being that it's Aquarius, it's considering 8th house, right? You're very much considering everyone's, and all air signs are like that, you're considering everyone's perspective. This is to be fair and to be right for everyone. So this is not a sneaky business of like getting someone to sneak out of, and I'm obviously talking normal marriage as opposed to different kinds that require different methods, which I'm not going to go into, but yeah. In fact, as I'm talking about this now, and I'm working off my notes, but that's just how I am. Like, I have more and more ideas. Like, this could be the first offer. So detachment, my second suggestion, which is detachment, could be the first offer that precedes the emancipation. Because in a way, you're teaching them to, in detachment offer, you are moving your clients from subjective bias to clarity. In other words, you're coaching them to detach, to disidentify with what isn't them, A. And B, identifying with anything for too long is never a healthy way of existing, and certainly relating, because it creates the sticky, unhealthy, codependent energy. This could be your first tier. So you're first teaching your married couples, already married individuals, before they're ready to divorce. You're teaching them detachment, because through that detachment they will gain clarity, because they will disidentify with all kinds of stuff that they have over-identified within the marriage and within themselves in relation to them being a spouse, right, is the word. And then the emancipation might even be something that they can do within the marriage, meaning that the need for the divorce might not be anymore the need, because they have sorted their own mess out, and the marriage just followed and fell into its place, the right place for the new them, your client, right? And the last one, innovation. Here you're moving your client from the middle to the forefront. So this could be actually business coaching. So how to differentiate yourself. So a business in this particular scenario would be established to a point, but they have established themselves and either created or have done so by just merging themselves and belonging to a certain ecosystem and establishment of sorts that belongs to their industry, particular industry, right? So they're in the middle of it all and they're too constrained. And so you're moving them through this middle to the forefront. You want them to be the leader. So they're moving from being one of many to being the first also, and the leader, the first and the at the forefront, right? And you're doing that by innovation, like meaning you're getting them to think innovatively, to come up with the innovative ways of differentiating themselves, and what makes them different, or how can they be different? How can they innovate within the business? And it's again, like all of these, always moving from that. When you're moving from that place of death, you want to compost or want to use the death process to compost your future, is what I mean. Which means the business is looking at what they already have. How can they repurpose it? How can they maximize it? How can they be on the cutting edge of their industry? And that's all I have for you, waterizing signs with the air element in your 8th house. Till next time, have a great week.